All right, today we're talking about how to create software faster than ever. AI is all the rage, vibe coding is super popular, and you can use these tools in order to create custom software like you never could before. My guest today is Ashish Patel. I'll tell you more to him in a second, so stay tuned.
Welcome to the Smart Business Revolution podcast, where we feature top entrepreneurs, business leaders, and thought leaders and ask them how they built key relationships to get where they are today. Now, let's get started with the show. Hi, thanks for tuning into the podcast. On this special edition of the show, you'll hear Rise 25's John Corcoran's interview of Ashish Patel. It was originally done for another podcast, but we thought you'd benefit from hearing it here. It's brought to you by EO Austin, a community in Austin, Texas for influential entrepreneurs. Since 1995, EO Austin has connected business owners and entrepreneurs across industries to build community, share experiences, and inspire innovation. EO Austin's members are focused on business growth, personal development, and community engagement. To join the world's most influential community of entrepreneurs in Austin, visit www.eoaustin.com/join-EO. Now, enjoy this interview featuring Ashish Patel.
All right, welcome everyone. John Corcoran here. I am the host of this show, and every week we have smart CEOs, founders, and entrepreneurs from all kinds of companies. We've had Netflix and Grubhub, Redfin, Gusto, Kinko's, lots of great episodes in the archives. And before we get into this episode is brought to you by Rise 25, where we help businesses to give to and connect to their dream relationships and partnerships. How do we do that? We do that by helping you to run your podcast. We are the easy button for a company to launch and run their podcast. We do three things: strategy, accountability, and full execution. And we've invented what some are calling the Wix of B2B podcasting. It's our platform, Podcast Copilot. So you can learn more about it by going to our website, rise25.com, or you can email us at support@rise25.com. All right, and my guest here today is Ashish Patel, is the CEO and founder of Simpat Tech. It's a custom software development company based in Austin, Texas, which he started way back in 2015, about 10 years ago now, and has grown that company over those years through custom software solutions and development and stuff like that. So we're going to talk about that. And he and I connected through the Entrepreneurial Masters program, which we both are participating in. And Ashish, I know we tried to get this scheduled for a long time, so I'm so excited that we finally got it scheduled. And you have an interesting background. Your parents came from India to Kenya, then London, then Texas, then the United States. So lots of moving around and a bit of an immigrant ethic that you learned, you were kind of like instilled in you from a young age. And your parents even, I think your dad and his brother lived on top of a convenience store. So it sounds like there's a bit of an entrepreneurship that was kind of, in you from a very young age. So talk a little bit
Yeah,
about that background.
yeah. It's you learn a lot. You just assume that's kind of the way of life until you realize like that's not normal. But yeah, so a little bit of history there. So back when India and Kenya were a colony, and the British colony, so there was a lot of movement happening between those. There was also a lot of opportunity, right? In India is their third world country, not a lot of development at the time, and there was
Especially
opportunity
40
for.
or so years ago.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
even
yeah,
less
may
then
no
back
more
then.
than that.
Yeah,
Like this,
50
you're
years
talking
ago.
about almost 60 years ago.
Yeah.
My grandparents saw an opportunity to go both sides. My dad and my mom moved to Kenya, and they started a business to support the army, and so they
Hmm.
were the main suppliers in this remote village for the British Army. And
So
it
not
was
even in
wildly
Nairobi.
successful.
This was in a
No, this
smaller
was
out.
out of
Wow.
Nairobi. Yeah, they
Wow.
moved to Nairobi later. And so uh, they, I hear stories of like they were making so much money they were importing Cadillacs into like small villages.
Into
But
small.
they ended up, through a couple like a generation, like I think they blew it all, and unfortunately none of that filtered down. But it kind of instilled this entrepreneurial spirit, but it also there's a lot of that within a lot of the Indian community that moved to Kenya. Had that spirit, and it continued. So, then for opportunity, my parents and their family moved to London, and they opened the only thing they know is to start a business. They opened a convenience store, and both our families, and again, this was just normal to me. Both my parents and my my uncle's family lived in the right on top of the convenience store, and we would run it, between the two families while my dad got an education, and we just made it work. And I was in the shop, as we would call it, every morning, and had a little playpen in there while things were happening.
Wow.
But then over time, once my dad got an education, we moved to the U.S., got my education, and then yeah, I had that spirit, and wanted to
Yeah.
attack
And
it.
I'm sure you spoke with Shabar Jabani, who's in
Yeah.
the EMP
Hmm.
program. And he also he has Indian roots, but lives
Same
in
thing.
Kenya.
Yeah.
I learned through him how there's this large community. I didn't know this. There's a
Huge
large community
community.
of
Yeah.
Indian in Kenya. Yeah, yeah,
Hmm.
really
Yeah.
interesting.
Kind of a lot of East Africa, Tanzania as well.
Yeah. I had an amazing, fascinating conversation with someone who only immigrated here to the Bay Area 2 years ago and sought
Hmm.
asylum,
Mm.
and was telling me this story, this crazy story of like 10 stops around the globe with just ended up in the United States in the southern border and surrendered himself and sought
Wow.
asylum. And just like it
Oof.
made me so appreciative.
Yeah.
I am not an immigrant. But I
Hmm.
appreciate the immigrant story. And also, I really appreciate having interviewed 1,500 people through this podcast,
Yeah.
what that does, how many immigrants and next generation, children of immigrants start
Hmm.
companies and create tremendous wealth
Hmm.
from that kind of can-do spirit.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I more recently uh, just recognize how grateful I am to my parents for making that leap to leave their entire family in London, to move to a foreign country, to start, no friends, start from scratch. And really, the only reason is for us, right? Like they didn't have to do that; they were doing it for their kids. Actually, my
Yeah.
sister wasn't even around that point; it was for me. Um, and
Wow.
that I don't even know that's something that I could do, right? And to move my entire family to another country to do that. So I'm very grateful for that, um,
Right.
for that effort.
Yeah, absolutely. So talk a little bit about, you ended up starting a company at a young age, which was born out of your own personal frustration. Before
Hmm.
we get into that, were you like a techie kid? Were you like taking apart
Oh yeah.
computers? Were you,
Yep.
programming websites at a young age? When did you get interested in this stuff?
Yeah, so my dad was a software engineer. That's, while we were running the convenience store, or my family was, he was getting an education in software engineering. And that's how, at the time, there was a ton of opportunity in the US for that role. And so we came over. And so just through that community, I think I had an Apple IIc was my first computer. And my parents' friends who he worked with, kids had they were showing me how you can actually code on the Apple IIc without just like on the kernel. And so they were like, "Oh, look, you can do this, a while loop, and like print out like some crazy stuff." And I was like, "Man, this is so cool." And so that was like what piqued my interest. Of course, the games was interesting as well, but
Hmm.
that was kind of my first like development experience.
And you ended up studying computer science in college.
I did. Yeah, I went
Yeah.
to Virginia Tech. I knew that pretty early. Like, hey, this is really interesting to me, and plus it makes a lot of money, so why not? Let's
Yeah.
go try it out. And it came pretty easy to me. But yeah, that's what I did. And then I went to University of Florida because I love the technology part of it, but I really liked applying the technology, like this solving the problems part of it was more interesting to me. And so I went to grad school at Florida, for
And that's
business.
not something I've seen a lot of. A lot of times people get their computer science degree and then they go off into the working world. But you actually went and got your master's degree. What was, why did you think that that was necessary at the time? And
Yeah,
and, and
I think
reflecting back on
really,
it,
yeah.
are you glad that you did it?
That's a good question. So I think it's probably the main reason is probably the wrong reason, which I just was not done with school. I just loved
Yeah.
learning, and I loved the
Yeah.
environment of being on a university, and it was also paid for because I got a TA-ship. So it seemed like, no 2 years, no brainer.
Yeah.
Would I do it again? I think I didn't lean into entrepreneurship early. on. I don't think I had confidence in myself that I could do it. And so I do kind of wish I leaned in more on that and been less risk adverse. Uh, and yeah, so I'm torn between that, but you change one thing and you change everything. So,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm happy. I met a lot of great people at Florida that I'm still friends with, and so I wouldn't
Yeah.
want to change that.
I just paid my last payment on my law school loans like
Oh
within the
wow.
last month. And I
Okay.
graduated in 2007. And I haven't practiced law in about 8 or 9 years.
Yeah.
My wife reminds me of this all the time. But I would, I look back at it and I kind of don't think I would change anything because going and getting that graduate degree gave me the confidence that I could go out in the world and I
Mm,
could figure anything out, which I didn't
yeah.
have before, frankly. When you have a bachelor's degree, it was at a BA in English. I didn't feel like I could do anything. But after getting
Mm,
a law degree, I was like, I can figure it out.
yeah.
That helped a
Good
lot.
point. Yeah, great point.
You had this challenge. You were looking for a bike. You're an avid cyclist. You couldn't afford to get the type of bike you wanted, and you're checking Craigslist regularly to see if you can find an affordable one, and you saw an opportunity. So tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so you kind of have to rewind. I don't even remember when is this, 2010, right? So 15 years ago,
Yeah.
when Craigslist was the rage, it was
And
basically
the
the
end all be
only
all.
marketplace.
There's no next
Yeah,
place. There's no Facebook Marketplace. There's no next
nothing.
door. Yeah.
Yeah, this is like either Craigslist or a newspaper, right? Is like your two options. Um, and I also just graduated college, had college loans, so couldn't afford a brand new bike, and was looking for it on Craigslist, and I was on there like every hour seeing what popped up. I was like, there's got to be a better way. And so I built this little app that would basically troll Craigslist or a search
And, and by the way, the other thing that was frustrating about Craigslist is that that was where everyone went, and they were like so. Back then, I don't even think they had images like built into it, or
yeah,
they weren't
it
on
was
this.
definitely
They were
it
definitely
was
weren't
like
on the search
2000
results page.
era
Yeah, it was like
website,
all
right?
links and stuff, and like they
Yeah.
were just like they were like almost antagonistic towards their users around changing the user experience, and
Oh,
and
100%.
and I
Yeah.
think it absolutely led to these other types of opportunities coming
Right.
along.
And
Yeah.
they could have easily have built this, which they ended up doing that, which I can get into. But yeah, it was great because it found me my bike, maybe a couple months later, it like
Wow.
popped, the one that I wanted popped up, and I bought it.
Hmm.
So it worked, and then I was like, this has got to be something that I could monetize and use somewhere else, or other people want to use. And so put a front end on it, built it. I learned actually front end programming because of that project. And I didn't even think about this. I don't know if I would have gotten into the development role that I did after that, or the development path that led to me my current job, because I leaned on that experience even for interviews moving forward. But
Hmm.
yeah, so I put that out there, and then I think we had maybe a few thousand paying customers. Um, but then it kind of all stopped because we got a cease and desist from Craigslist.
You get
So
a
we had
cease and desist from
to,
Craigslist.
yeah,
Okay, which is funny because I mean they seem so laid back about everything. How did you
yeah.
react when you got that?
Well, kind of the initial reaction is being pissed off and like, how could they? And this is we're providing a service, and it was clear that after some conversations that this is something they were going to introduce into their platform, and so they were just kind of
Conversations with Craigslist?
yeah. I mean, we never hired a lawyer, but we had a friend who was a lawyer that kind of talked to, because
Yeah.
they hired a firm, right? And so our lawyer talked to their firm, and it was like that was the reason they were cracking down on it.
And was this
Uh,
your full-time job at that
oh
point?
no, no, no. This was
Okay.
like
Okay.
I was working for corporate,
Okay.
and I was like, corporate sucks, so I got to find something else to keep me busy, and this is what I
Yeah.
was doing.
So you must have been a little bit upset about it though.
Yeah, definitely upset, and felt that that didn't have that right to do it, and so on. But um, I don't, I think I got over it pretty quick because
Yeah.
I didn't, it wasn't like it was making tons of money. Like
Yeah.
it was
Yeah.
like going out partying money.
Yeah.
That's about it.
So I moved to San Francisco in 2003, and I have to tell you my Craigslist story.
Okay.
Because I ran into Craig Newmark multiple times, and
Hmm.
I don't know if you've seen it. He's kind of a short guy. He will admit that he's nerdy, dweeby kind of guy, And he just like would show up at parties and it'd say Craig on his, hi, my name is Craig,
No way.
and he'd be like, Craig, and he would like mumble something like, I have a website, or I created, Craigslist, or he'd make some self-deprecating, comment or something. And I don't think I'm exaggerating saying he's one of the worst conversationalists I've ever met in my life. Nice guy, horrible at conversation. So it's like within seconds, you're like, holy shit, this is Craig from Craigslist. Oh my God, I can't believe I'm talking to Craig from Craigslist. And a second later, you're like, I don't know what to say. I'm not sure what should we talk about? What do you say to someone like that? So
Yeah,
nice
that's
guy,
hilarious.
but yeah, just awkward.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so when you say you run into them like at entrepreneurial stuff or just on the
Back
street
then it
or
was political stuff. So I started my career in politics. And so I
okay.
would be at different political gatherings, fundraisers sometimes. He went to lots of fundraisers. So I would run into him at different political things mostly. Yeah, rather
Interesting.
than entrepreneurial things. But
Okay.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I think he
I
was,
don't even know, it's funny because like you brought this up earlier and I don't think I've mentioned the word Craigslist in years, right? Like
yeah.
I don't know if it's even around. I know it turned into kind of like a undercover hookup type of site, but
Well,
I don't know
it's
what happened.
if you added up the number of sites from like Yelp to Nextdoor to you name it that were basically like a better version of Craigslist, there
Hmm.
thousands of them have come out of it
Hmm.
and
Oh
billions of
yeah, right.
dollars worth
Right.
because it was just the end all
It
be
was
all. It was
the
like
only thing,
it's
right?
everything. Yeah.
Yeah.
And fascinating business. And they also had this tiny little house out in the Richmond district or the Sunset district of San Francisco that was like, it was like retail shop. And then there was like just like this house that said Craigslist on it. And that's where they worked out. It was bizarre.
Yeah, and it
It was
was
like one
like
of the massive websites.
making millions of dollars and they had like 40
Yeah.
employees, like
Yeah.
hundreds of millions of dollars, right?
Yeah, exactly. It was crazy. All right, so that doesn't work out. And
Hmm.
so you work kind of corporate for a few years, and then eventually, in looks like 2015, you started Simpat Tech. So,
Hmm.
what gave you the courage then to go out on your own?
Yeah, so I that initial dabble into ownership and entrepreneurship was like, okay, this is clearly the path I want to find my way to. And what's interesting, I think back to this is like, why was I not led to that earlier? I think part of being um, the children of immigrants is that they're taking all this risk so that you don't have to take the risk, right? And you're kind of ingrained in like, go, we created this opportunity for you, so take it and let's not screw it up, right? And so it took me a while to realize like, hey, this is not the risk-free path is not the path I want to go on. I want to try starting my own thing. So, but I did it in a very safe way, right? I started a professional services company, which all you need is one client that's going to cover
Right.
your, if you want to start on your own, just one
Yeah.
client that can cover your salary. And so that's kind of what I did is I went to a consulting company. And we'll probably come back to this is he was the owner was kind of like a mentor and really helped me, even gave me an opportunity to a launching point to
Oh,
start my own
that's
thing,
great.
which
Yeah.
is not common in
No.
our space. And so, yeah, I started this thing and it was just me and doing the development work and figuring out how I can grow and learning. I joined, I don't know if you ever talked about EO. It's called Ignite here, but Accelerator pretty early on, which then all of a sudden I'm surrounded by other passionate entrepreneurs. And that's the spark that I needed
Yeah.
to say, okay, I can do this and I want more. And so I started seeing how I could grow it and build it. And really, that's kind of the start of the journey.
I've definitely talked about the accelerator program a number of times before. It's been huge for me.
Hmm.
Definitely, I feel like it's the MBA that I never got, and it really
Hmm.
helped us. So you start this, and then I want to ask you about were were you ever fearful to take on projects that were too big
Mm.
because you had your own firm? Because that was one thing that held me back when I started
Yeah.
my own law firm. I was comfortable with like certain size clients, but then things would come to
Hmm.
me, they were too big, and I was like, I didn't have a mentor there for me. And so I eventually realized, I'm always going to be dabbling in these small little projects if I continue
Yeah.
to be a lawyer.
Yeah. It's and especially if you kind of come from that entrepreneurial doer model where you know what it means. You know what a big project means versus not, right? If you're coming from more like a sales background, you're like, yeah, I can do it, and then you figure it out. But when you know what it's going to entail, it's a little different.
Yeah.
And so, yes, I was scared of those larger projects. But what I wasn't scared of was taking on projects that were a little bit bigger than where I was today, right? Knowing and with that, and this is just like any startups, right? Like you're going to figure it out. You're going to hack your way through it. And as long as you feel like you have surrounded yourself with good people, then it's going to lead to good things. And so, yeah, like we were definitely scrappy early on, just like any other company. And what's exciting is as you start growing and you start building a team, is now it's much easier to stretch bigger, right? Thinking bigger or taking on bigger things because you have a team to help support you. It's not just you taking on all that risk. So, yeah, it was tough early days, and but it's now I've kind of flipped over and I'm like ready to take on more and more risk.
Yeah. Now, around 2018, you realized that you were having scaling issues, so you ended up bringing in a co-founder.
Yeah.
What was that analysis like, and how did you come to that realization?
Yeah. So, I was getting more work and I needed to create some way to set myself apart. And I also didn't want to take on money. So at the time, it was all US folks within our team, contractors, and I think we had a couple hires at the time. And this is also a time when Austin was booming. Salaries were getting crazy for software developers, and I just knew I couldn't scale the demand was there, but I couldn't scale just with people. And so I found a partner that actually had worked with in a previous company and had started an operations in Monterrey, Mexico for that company.
Mm.
And he also had an entrepreneurial spirit, wanted to start his own thing, and he kind of spun up his kind of a software development center down there, and I was basically finding the work, and we were kind of dating at the time. And then after a year of dating, we are like, okay, let's join forces because clearly there's some synergies here. This is working. Um, and yeah, we combined, and kind of that was my capacity relief there on finding the work and being able to deliver on it. And that
And
also gives us that unique value of like you have to think back to 2018. The concept of nearshoring wasn't even really around. Like no one
yeah,
knew that word. We were educating people on what nearshoring meant, and even like the idea of having Mexico talent, which in Monterrey is the third best Latin America technical university. It's kind of
yeah,
mirrored off
the kind of the
MIT.
MIT of
Exactly.
Mexico is in Monterey.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So it
yeah.
just creates this kind of culture and ecosystem of talent, just kind of like how Boston does currently. So it was a great move, and it's what we needed at the time, and it has helped get us through that scaling challenge that we needed to
Was that
get
a
through.
difficult adjustment for you, or did it make it easier for you because then you could just focus on sales and not have to worry as much about the fulfillment piece?
Um, yeah, it was difficult because I was still the face. We didn't really start maturing our delivery systems till COVID, when we didn't have a choice. Um, and so yeah, I was the sales side, but I was still the face of the projects.
Hmm.
And so I was like stretched and,
Hmm.
and billable too, right? I was still billable at the time. So that's probably something I would have done differently, is lean in on taking that risk of making some key hires in the US to offload that. But yeah, it was challenging, but it was good. When you're growing, it's like you can the challenge there, it feels like you are solving things in a way that's supporting positive momentum versus like if you're solving things that if your sales are down or if your delivery is not off. So it was a fun challenge.
So how do you hire now? Do you hire like in the US for like the face of the project, like an account manager type
Mm,
of thing,
yeah.
or project manager, and then the rest is from nearshoring Latin America or other countries?
So no, we pretty much are only in Mexico, and that's on purpose because the way we also set ourselves apart is that we have an entity in Mexico and everyone's hired into that entity. Most
Mm.
companies that are doing what we're trying to pull off kind of just have a pool of contractors
Hmm.
in Latin America, but culture is the most one of the most important pieces for me. And so to build a culture, you need to have employees
Hmm.
and somewhere that employees can come to and feel a part of. So yeah, so we hire in Mexico and typically, ideally in Monterrey if we can, because again, the now you have your 45-minute flight to San Antonio, right? So you're right on the border, cultural, a lot of cultural similarities. In fact, they watch more NFL than I do, which is interesting. And they all speak great English. So it's not as much of like the face, but we do hire kind of our ideal situation is a pod where we have a strong US tech lead, a client delivery manager, and then a series of our Monterey folk and developers part of that team. And there's multiple reasons why that just generally works better.
Yeah. And you mentioned culture. So what did you do in order to build that culture, maintain that culture, while building this cross-border team?
Yeah, I mean, I think having my partner boots on the ground, so he moved from the US down there, that makes a huge difference. I know a lot of companies that try to pull this off, and it's really challenging to do that without having someone with skin in the game, boots on the ground, making sure that it's launched. Now we're past the growing pains and all the challenges of setting up an entity. It's probably 10 times harder to set all that up down there versus the US, which makes me grateful for being in the US. Um, but so I go down there every 2 months, between my COO and myself. We make it a priority to get down there 10 to 11 times a year. When we go down there, we keep an open calendar, which just how can we have informal conversations? We have parties at the office. And so I think that's important. And again, not a lot of other companies do that. Um, and so we really see this as one team, not two teams, not the US team and the Mexico team. And I think having that mindset also creates a cohesive culture, um, and we invest in it too. We have people dedicated to culture as well.
You are a big traveler. You've been to 50 or
Hmm.
so countries. I'm curious, selfishly, I love traveling as well. Uh, Four kids have gotten a little bit of a way of that.
Hmm.
But we're planning a big trip for this summer. But for you, like, what are some tips and tricks? Like, how do you manage to run a company and also
Yeah.
travel?
Well, to be fair, right, like all the most of my traveling happened before I started the company. So after I graduated, um, grad school, actually both I lived in Australia for 6 months after undergrad, and then I traveled the world after grad school.
Hmm.
So it was basically me in a backpack and 12 months on the road. I
12
I
months.
don't think
Wow. I did
that's,
three
yeah,
months. Wow.
yeah, 12 months, and it was
Wow.
like 45 countries or something.
Wow.
I probably don't recommend that for you at the
Yeah.
age that you're
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
at. So I don't know if
No.
my tips and tricks on that one would support
Backpacks and
that.
hostels? I don't think so.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I got bed bugs twice, which was
Ugh.
not a great experience.
Uh,
Um, but I think later in life, for me, traveling was very important. So I just incorporate it as a part of that's just what we do, right?
yeah.
And we started traveling when the kids were 6 months, both of them. We have family in the UK, so that's just an easy button, right? And,
Yeah.
and in Kenya still. So it's like there's a reason to go out there, so let's go. And then that's our home base, and then we can go check out other things.
That's really cool. I also want to ask you about AI. Like, how do you see that? They were recording this in the middle of 2025. How do you
Yeah,
see AI
right.
and vibe coding and
Sure.
some of this stuff affecting your business?
And I think, this probably by the time this comes out, this will probably completely change. But
Of course, right?
um, so, I think AI coding or vibe coding, which is for us, a lot of people ask, oh, that's going to negatively impact your business. And we see it as an opportunity. That means we can deliver faster, and deliver more efficiently. Um, and ultimately, if we're talking about like some of our clients, we're pulling them off mainframes, right? And so, like, if we're talking about that type of work, like, that's not something that you're just going to tell some AI bot to say, all right, pull all these apps off the mainframe and then we'll go live in 2 months. So there's still a lot of work to be done. I think the question that I get a lot, or I think the question really should be, is how should we be enabling our dev teams in an efficient way to use AI, in an intentional way, versus it just, hey, you guys can go use Copilot, or go use Cursor, which is starting to be, I think, the leader in this in the tooling here. And then just become, we don't need to hire anymore, become more efficient. And so what we're finding is, as we're doing, we're playing around with different tools, and we're embedding it into our some of our pods, is that the real value in the vibe coding, you you can't subtract the experience and get the same efficiencies. So our senior principal folks that use the coding tools are incredibly more efficient in being able to get through their tasks. They're essentially, it's like a team of junior developers, right? Like it's generating the code, but you're able to review it, and give it feedback. Tell it, hey, I would probably change this for loop and do this. And so you're kind of training it, and then over time, it's just going to become better and better. And now you can maybe add more. Um, at more, you're adding more junior developers. But if you give that tool to junior developers, and they're just clicking like the easy button and saying accept, 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 and all of a sudden they have up all this code that they didn't intentionally look at, or determine if it made sense. You're actually setting yourself up for failure. You're adding more work to the person reviewing the code, because now they have to look through it and find all those errors. Um, and then there's probably bugs that may get introduced that you may not have caught. And so what we found is the framework is really around enabling your most experienced folks with these tool sets first, getting them the experience, and then you start mentoring, bringing other folks into adoption by mentoring them and using that. And it's not like one, because we thought about building a framework around this, but for everyone to use, but it really depends on the culture of your development teams, and how you want to use it. And so it really needs to be specific to each team or
Yeah.
each company.
Yeah. Yeah. And how do you stay up to speed on all this with everything changing so fast?
Yeah, I mean, so we actually have a dedicated group of folks that are interested in this technology, that are spending time evaluating the different tools and reading up on it. And I get a report every quarter on what's going on and what the suggestions are. And so we start tweaking, because we want to provide this value and this information back to our clients, right? That they're asking us, hey, how do we use AI to go faster?
Yeah.
And so we want to have good answers for our clients. We want to be good
Hmm.
partners. And so, yeah, we're kind of giving them, and we also like to initiate pilot programs, right, as part of our team. And usually our team is a hybrid of our clients' team and our team. And so we can start sharing that knowledge and building that practice.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I want to get to my last question, which is my gratitude question. But before I do that, I was with my EO forum yesterday, and we were talking about the topic of what is the next chapter for all of us. We were
Mm,
talking about what would the next chapter be for all
hmm.
of us. And I'm actually interested because you have a friend who you share an office with. His name is Lance Armstrong.
Yeah.
And you've kind of been sitting there seeing as he figures out his next chapter. He's got apparently a health tech fund now. And I think that's a bit fascinating. What has that been like for you to see someone who, has a prominence that he does, figure out his next chapter?
Yeah, yeah, he's a really good friend, and it's been fun to see him through that journey, starting it, and now, successfully running the first fund, and starting a second fund. Um, you know, I guess from a if you kind of think of the journey that he took, he started in cycling, and then going into something very, very different, right? And being curious about it and leaning into it and
You've heard like
making.
Live Strong, yeah. So Live Strong became this massive website about, what
Mhm.
was it, 10, 12 years ago?
Yeah, it
Yeah.
was. And then, with the various news items that came out, it kind of started falling, and then he started this. And so I think one thing it taught me is that the core, because I'm an athlete too, and like that core drive to do to be successful in some endeavor that you take on can be applied across, you know, all types of areas, including business and life and being a dad and being a husband. And so, and I think I've done that across different parts of my life. And I think what I really want to do is think about what am I passionate about, and then find something in that space that I can apply this drive to and try to, create something new
That's
in the
awesome.
future, right? Like
Yeah.
this, right now, I'm having fun
Yeah.
building Simpat Tech, and
Yeah.
let's keep going on that route.
Last question. I'm a big fan of gratitude, especially expressing gratitude to those who've helped you in your journey along the way. Are there any particular peers, contemporaries,
Yeah,
mentors that you'd want to
sure.
acknowledge?
So I'll go back to, when I was at the consulting firm before I started Simpat Tech. I knew I wanted to start this. I wanted a jumping off point. I had one. And the owner of that company, Dustin Wells, was actually also the EO president for Austin, which is how
Hmm.
I got introduced to EO. Supported me in my interest
Hmm.
and curiosity in being an entrepreneur. And in most scenarios, owners don't support that. They really see you as a billable employee. They see revenue, right? Dollars. And so they don't want you to leave. They don't want you to go work with a former client. And so in this scenario, we were able to work something out where he would support it. And I could always give him a call throughout my journey to ask him questions. And because he had kind of built the firm that I wanted to build. And I used that as a template in a lot of ways. And it's different now, right? The times have changed, but and I can still give him a call. He's ended up
Yeah.
exiting and selling to Accenture, but he's always available.
Yeah, it's funny. I had a friend, his name's Riley Hurd, who's an attorney here locally. And when I started my legal firm, he basically gave me some work that kept me busy for a period of time that allowed me kind of transition to having my own book of business. And forever grateful to him for doing that. Those relationships are so really magical, and
Mm,
they're really just
yeah.
critical for people starting a new company, and you don't always get them. So, Ashish, this has been great. Where can people go to learn more about you, connect with you, and reach out if they have any questions?
Yeah, I think LinkedIn is probably the place where I am on the most. So find me on LinkedIn. Ashish dash Simpat is my handle there.
Awesome, Ashish. Thanks so much.
So thanks, Sean. Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Smart Business Revolution podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.